on the street. Did my time, took my chances. Went the distance, now I'm back on my feet. Just a man and his will to survive. Woo! So many times it happens too fast. You trade your passion for glory. Don't lose your grip on the dreams of the past. You must fight just to keep them alive. Get your feet outside and reach the thrill of the fight. Rising up to the challenge of our rival. And in the night, no survivor stalks his prey in the night. And he's watching us all with the eye.
So tonight is Rick's night, and so Rick is going to be presenting on Dockers and Docker securities, anything he wants to talk about, but to give everybody a chance to get familiar with the Docker technology, because we use VirtualBox, so this is just another alternative as far as creating your own lab environment that you can start practicing your hacking techniques in. So with that being said, Rick, take it away. It's all yours.
Great, thanks, Ota. Thanks for that intro. Again, thanks for providing this platform for us to learn from and to present. And like Ota said, it's really about providing you. We can't give you all the details, all the technical know-how of how to troubleshoot. That's really a skill that you got to develop on your own. But it's really about kind of creating a spark of some kind of interest. And that's kind of what happened, like Ota mentioned with me with Splunk. I had never heard of Splunk before one of the presentations that we had at the meetup, and just from that, it was just kind of sparked an idea of we had some, we were collecting thousands of logs, but nobody was using them, and from that was kind of born where I was able to learn the program and really present it to my boss, who then kind of accepted, and we purchased it, and it's running the company, and it's helping various departments. So what I wanted to do today is just briefly kind of describe what Docker is, just so you get an understanding of how it's used in the industry. Also to understand how you can use Docker containers for your pen testing. You can spin up your tools in Docker containers quickly, and that only gives you a better understanding of, I guess, what you can call an attack surface. If you understand how people are using it in the industry, you can understand that it's basically another attack surface that you can learn and understand the vulnerabilities. So and I'm going to try to do this presentation a little differently because I definitely learned a lot from Al's presentations. He's given a number of presentations, not to use too many slides. I've given a presentation, I've used a lot of slides before, so this one's going to be basically no slides. I'm just going to try to do a hands-on and show you different documentation, and then show you different programs that you spin up. So yeah, so just to get started, just Docker real simply, and it's not technically accurate, but just so you get an understanding, Docker container is basically a very lightweight VM. Okay, so it's basically a machine that you install your software, program, or whatever. So that's really a simple overview of what a Docker container is. And then I also want to show you what they call Docker Swarm, and that's where you're basically managing multiple containers. And the reason I want to just put that out there is because that's called container orchestration. So very popular one that you'll hear is Kubernetes, but it's easier for me to demonstrate the Docker Swarm. and that'll give you a really good idea of the other container orchestration tools like Kubernetes. And then I'll show you some of the applications that you can spin up quickly, and then other tools that people have created for pen testing. So let me share my screen here. I just kind of made an outline of kind of what I want to go through. Again, I'm not using slides this time. So we kind of covered real high level what a container is. And let me, for example, I can spin up one really quick. I'll spin up a, for example, we'll spin up a web server. This is very simple. Docker run, assign a port. Let's call it 8888. And I'll kind of try to explain what the components are in real basic terms here. So let's see here. Okay, right there, I spun up a web server on my box, and I'll show you.
Hey, could you make that a little bit bigger, the
Oh, I'm
font?
sorry. Yeah, I'm
That's
sorry.
right.
It's really small. Okay. Now I'll just kind of go through a little bit because this will kind of help your understanding of when we spin up other Docker containers. So essentially, on this server, on your servers you have to install Docker. So I've already installed Docker, and then I can do the commands. Windows has a Docker for Windows. It'll give you all the components you need, and so you're ready on your command line to do the Docker commands. So what I'm doing here is I say Docker run. I'm assigning a port on the outside, and the application inside the container has its own port. And then this is the actual Docker image. Okay, this is the program that somebody created that's packaged up, okay, into an image. And so what happens is if you don't have this image on your computer, on your server, it goes out by default to a repository, which is called Docker Hub. So you go visit Docker Hub and you'll see all types of applications, and that's so you understand that's where it's coming from. And that's just by default repository. You can go to other repositories. You can have your own private repository. You can have a local repository. But just so you understand what's happening, it's pulling an image and then spinning it up into a container based on this command, just because it's Docker and the default repository goes to Docker Hub, where it just pulls it down onto your computer, and then you have that image on your computer and it spins it up into a container. So now this computer, so we put it port 888. Let me bring up the web server. So I have the domain cyberjedination.net, and we gave it the port 8888. Hopefully that works. Okay, so you can see it's a web server we spun up. It already has some text in it, and it works. So you can just add your own, HTML code as you want, right? So that's a simple web server. And what the nice thing about Docker containers is that those files aren't intermixed with your server files. So that's kind of another advantage of having these containers, is that all this files, all the dependencies are all contained within that container. So an advantage of that is that you can do updates on containers. Say you need a Java package update for whatever, and sometimes if you do that on your server, it affects other dependencies, other packages, and you kind of mess up your computer, your server. So you can do it individually by container as needed, and you won't affect your server operating files. That's another advantage of the Docker containers. So let me get my outline here. And feel free to ask any questions, because again, this is kind of me going through the interactive steps, and then answering any questions you have. Again, not trying to follow too many fixed slides. So what I want to show you was give you a visual of what Docker Swarm is. And that's, again, in the general term, it's called container orchestration. So orchestration tools, a very popular one is Kubernetes. You'll hear that all over the place. And again, that's something that's important to learn just because of understanding the systems and how what vulnerabilities they have. So let me go here. Okay, and what I want to do is I'm going to start up what they call Docker Swarm. So do this here. So what I want to do though is give you a visual. So let me bring that up, and then you can actually pull that up on the web page. And again, this program that lets us visualize the swarm is actually another Docker container. So that makes it really convenient. And I'll show you here on the screen. So I'm going to do it on this server, Cyber Jedi Nation, and we're going to put it on port 9090, and it'll let you, it'll show you, give you a visual of what's happening. And that I think will give you a good understanding of it. So again, I'm just going to run another Docker container, spin up a Docker container. And so what's happening is this is a larger file. So I don't have it locally. Well, I deleted just for so we could show you. It pulls it from the repository and then it spins up the container. So then I have it running on 9090. So you can go up, you can go into your web browser, and I'll pull it up here too, so you can look at it also at the same time. So cyberjedination.net 9090, okay. Okay, right now there's nothing, right? So let's see if I can keep this on the same screen here. So there we go. Docker Swarm. Okay, so what happens is one guy is considered the manager, and what you do is you run that command to initiate that swarm. And so let's go to our visual. Let's see if it shows up. Okay, now you see how that's called server one is this popped up on our swarm there, right? So what you do on the other servers is you just add that line that it generated. Oh, it's too big. Let me get that other. And we just apply that line in there. Oh, try that again. Okay, now I made this other server. Server 2 is also part of the swarm now, okay? And we'll just add another one just so you see it there. And you can see it's now considered a worker. And then let's go to the other one here and do that same line. I gotta do sudo su. Okay, so you can see now part of our Docker swarm, we have the 3 servers, right? Now, that in itself is not doing anything. We want to start basically what they call a service, basically one of those programs, one of those containers. So that let me go to my notes here. So we would just start a service. For example, I could do this is another web server, a separate instance. Let's go to that. We got to go to the manager. Okay, so now starting up that that application essentially, right? So let's see if it pops up there. So you can see it there. Okay, we started at one instance of that web server, uh, but if we want to increase that, all we would do is tell the manager, hey, we want more. So it says scale. We called it web server, and we want to say, let's make it bigger. Let's say like 6. So it's going to start those up, and it's going to load balance them across the servers. Okay.
So, Rick, just to clarify, so the Docker Swarm is like a manager for multiple Docker images, which you said are server 1, server 2, and server 3, right?
Yeah, because server 1, so these are my separate my separate servers, yes. So you
Okay.
make one guy the manager, and then you'll get an output so that you paste into the other servers, and it makes them what they call workers. But they all can handle the applications. Okay. So this is how companies are able to spin up thousands of applications that they need in real time. If there's an increase in demand at a certain time for whatever application, they can increase it in real time. Now the thing is with these orchestration tools, what I did is just really manual process, but you can imagine that these other there's files you can run that tells the system, hey, if for example we lose server 3, I always want 6 instances, so it's going to spin up automatically instances on server 1 and 2. And it's not just one web server. You can do other services, and that's how companies do it. They have multiple applications that talk to each other, um, and they need that processing power when there's the demand, but also it's for redundancy, and it's all it can be all automated because you'll have uh, you basically tell Docker Swarm or Kubernetes ahead of time how you want the system to run, and then those programs will keep it how you specified it. So if you can specify CPU, memory, and all that sort of things to grow instantly or to drop instantly. So um, and again for that redundancy. So if we lose, if there's an outage server 2, and you tell your swarm you always want the 6 instances of web server to be running, it'll spin up automatically on these other 2. So again, I chose to show you this because this Docker Swarm, because it's just an easy visual because somebody created this program to visualize the programs popping up automatic, when we put the command in. So again, Kubernetes is it's another container orchestration tool, but this is just to give you an idea what that means. Okay. And again, Kubernetes is probably the program most used in production. I don't think they really use Docker Swarm in a high level production network. So,
Okay. So
any questions?
just a level set, because there are a couple of few new people on the call, right? So imagine if it's Cyber Monday, right? And the company wants to spin up, they're expecting a huge uh, intake of visitors to their websites. And so what they'll do back in the day, they'll get a bunch of servers, and with these, they have 10 servers for their web application. They're expecting 1 million people to come. They know that the 10 million won't work, right? I mean, the 10 servers that they have won't work. They will back in the day physically buy some more, increase that 10 to 20. Then virtualization came around. So now what they would do was have one big beefy server and virtualize it with something like VMware or VirtualBox, typically VMware. So now the industry is changing. Instead of using VMware and changing, not increasing the number of physical servers, they're using something called Dockers. right? So Cyber Monday is coming. They know they need 20 servers in general. So now they're spinning up stuff very quickly using such things as Kubernetes, Docker Swarm to increase the server capacity to take this influx of new traffic during Cyber Monday. So I just want to add a scenario. So for some of the newer people to understand that what he's showing is a different way to manage and spin up virtual servers in something called Dockers or containers. Did I miss anything?
No, that was yeah, that's good to explain those things, because yeah, once I spin these up, I forget about some of the basics there. So, but yeah, so just imagine this is a program, and the reason you have multiple is to handle the load that comes in. And again, it's like we have 6 there, so I could easily do say 12. And that's going to do it just like that, starting them up, and you can see they're all green now, so they're running. So that can handle additional load as needed. And again, when you do that automation, you're going to specify how you want your system to run, and then the system will do what it needs to match your criteria. And again, this is not just one program. I could do multiple, because that's typically what would happen is that you'll have a multi-application program, where you have your web server, you'll have a database server, you'll have multiple applications running and talking to each other. But again, this is for the redundancy, to handle the load, and just to be able to do maintenance, on partial as needed, so you don't have to take the whole system down, and that it's always available in some way. But it allows you to really keep the uptime, 99 point, what do they call it, 79s or something like that. And again, this is container orchestration. Again, this would be automated. You would have files that you create that has all the specs of how you want it to run. So this was just a manual way to kind of show you that. So okay, so that was Docker Swarm. Now what I do want to show you is that's another container that you can do audits on your Docker. So let me see, where did I have that there? And this is going to get us to a website where it has a lot of good information of where you learn the best security practices for different types of applications. So this is called Docker Bench for Security. So let me show you. So again, this is another container and command that somebody created. I can just take that. And what this is going to do is going to do an audit on. So again, I didn't have it on there. It's going to look for it, pull it, and then run it. So what it's doing is doing an audit and giving you a score. We'll let that go through, and then what I'll show you is the documentation. This is only one of many that I have, and you can go to the website, and I'll put the website. And for example, so this is CIS benchmarks, and this one specifically is for Docker. And you can see this is, I don't know if you can see how many pages this is. Can you see it? About 260 pages of let me go to index here, of what to look for, and basically that's what that audit is doing, and they use this documentation to do that to do that audit and to give you a score. So it shows you best practices, and then and from this you can learn, the weaknesses. And this is stuff that's out there. Most people aren't going to look through this, but that's just to your advantage to see all this information, and this kind of um, and this will also help you to really understand the finer details of the setup, so you can understand the weaknesses and where to understand where people leave things open, where they forget to close things down, in terms of user rights. That's a big one, but it goes into a lot of detail that you can really get a lot out of. And again, um, this one is just Docker containers, but they have from all the major programs. Let me see. I have the other one, which is CIS for Kubernetes benchmark. And again, this one's 260 pages of information. Let me see if I can bring up that web page. To give you guys and all you have to do is just put an email. But you can see here, operating systems, got all the Windows versions, Linux, all the flavors, Mac, even Mac OS. And you can grab all these if you want. Servers, VM. And again, this is good information to really understand the finer details of these systems. And in the long run, it just helps you understand where people can attack and how you can, protect your systems. SQL Server is big one. You can see it just goes on and on. We got Docker. Kubernetes is a big one. So let me see if I don't know if this link would work for you. If it doesn't, just go to the cisecurity.org. But let me see if maybe this one will let you in. Let me see where it goes that. I lost the. I see you, but I can't get back to the the meeting. The paste in the chat. Let's see. Review.
You're trying to look at the chat?
Yeah, I'm trying to just paste the link in the chat, but I can't get to the chat.
Oh, so actually, someone pasted
there it is.
the benchmark in there.
Yeah, there it is. I got it. I just had to go to the top of the page. So if that doesn't work, this link doesn't work, then just go to the web page, the cisecurity.org, and you just have to give an email, and then it'll let you that same page where you can download those files. So recommend it.
And speaking of chat, someone just typed in the chat. They had a question regarding. They said, is Kubernetes a tool for managing Docker containers or a different type of container completely?
Oh, that's a really good question. Yeah, so Docker is not the only type of containers. There's other containers you want to learn about. So that's a really good question. No, it's not just for Docker. You definitely other type of containers out there. Okay. So any questions so far? Okay.
So from the chat room, that was the only question so far.
Okay. Good.
So yeah, Ray got a question. So those
Sure.
Docker containers you're spinning up, I see you using Amazon EC2, but are they spinning up another EC2 instance, or is it still running just on the same server?
No, it's on the same server. So for example, let's here, I don't know if you can see this. Docker PS. So Docker PS will show you the running containers. So I have all these containers running on this server. So that's like if you were to run it on your desktop, they would all run. If you had Docker on your desktop, it's running like an isolated instance in your machine. Isolated
Okay, thank you.
until you expose ports, and that's what I kind of showed you is that you need to expose a port so you can talk to it, because containers can always talk out, but unless you expose a port to the outside, you can't talk to it. So it could be running, your container could be running, but if you don't have any exposed ports, you can't get inside of, you can't, get to a port to get to that application. All right. All right. So and I just want to show you this one picture here. What happened to the picture? So again, this is a basically multi-application, multiple containers, but different applications, but they basically run. They're all talking to each other to provide a service, right? So there's this comes from the Vuln Hub, the vulnerable Docker that you can download and practice to do the attacks, because basically what they're showing you is that again, containers are just, you're inside of those, you're running applications, and as we know, a lot of applications are vulnerable. So this kind of shows you if you can get into, because they're going to be exposing one part, for example, WordPress, maybe like a blog site that's using WordPress. So if you know the vulnerabilities, you can get into that container, and once you're inside, these containers, they have what they call networks. So if they're in the same the containers are in the same networks, they can talk to each other. So what that causes is that, if you can get into WordPress with all the vulnerabilities, you could probably get to these other ones from this container. And then there's ways also from the container to get out to the host, and that's where you got to be careful, because if somebody's able to get out to the host, then that's bad news for you. So, but that's a good one to kind of show you how things can get attacked, how you can attack an application within a container, and how it can expose you to a risk of getting the other applications hacked. So let me start showing you just some applications, larger applications. I want to show you one program that we've talked about before is Splunk. So let's see. Let me get the other guy who's a little larger. Okay, so here I have a command to start Splunk Enterprise. One line, and we're going to start up Splunk Enterprise on this server. And again, these are, again, this is to show you that you can spin up programs for you to start practicing and creating your lab, basically kind of what Al has been, speaking on the last few presentations of creating your lab. So we want to run Splunk Enterprise. So let me do this. Now, I hope I haven't run this with the same ports. But if I have, I can change the port easily. So let me run this on my server. Okay, so yeah, I deleted it. So now it's pulling. Remember, so I didn't have it locally on the server, so it goes out to the Docker Hub, the default repository, and it's pulling that image. Once it has the image, then it's going to spin up the container. So we'll let that go. This one's pretty quick. And we'll just give it a few seconds to actually start up the program. So let's see if it's finished yet. So this one, okay, so in the background, sometimes like any other program, it's like booting up. So it takes a little time sometimes, but in generally very quick. So this is port 8000. So if we go to, this is my my server, cyberjedination.net, and we said port 8000, right? And again, you can do this on your local workstation. I just wanted to show you here so you could get an idea here. So admin, and this one is just, well, this was in the command line. You specify a password. Password. So there you go. You got a functioning Splunk enterprise to start learning, testing, whatever you want to do. There's other programs similar to Splunk that are open source. I think it's a Graylog. You can do the same thing, spin that up, learn it, practice with it. But again, it was just that quick. You saw how quick it was. Just I didn't even have the image on the server. It downloaded it from Docker Hub and it spun it up, and you can see how quick that is. So again, it's just to show you how quickly you can start setting up your labs. This one, I won't go through the steps here because, but again, if say you wanted a SQL Server, just as quick to start that up. It's one line, start it up. I got a program. You can use a program called, let me show you. So if you ever want to test against, if you're doing any kind of pen testing against SQL servers, you need different versions. You can run them at the same time. For example, this is one line. You can see this is running version 2017. I can do another at the same time. That's 2019. And then to connect to it, this is a local program, SQL Server Management Studio. You just put in the IP, the ports, and then you connect to that database, and you have a fully functional database that you can use. Okay. Now let me go to another program here. This one's for your own pen testing. I don't know if we've talked about this in the past, but it's called Juice Shop. Let's see if I get this. I don't know if I have this one running, but let's get this link. You guys copy. Oh, have we talked about Juice Shop? I can't remember.
So we've talked about it addressing. So this is good to actually show it from a Docker perspective because even with Al, he talks about finding a Docker image first. And the beauty about the Docker image is that with VirtualBox, a VMware player, a workstation, you have to install the application, right? And go through all that. With this, it's pretty much already set up. You're just not having to worry about installing the actually resources and libraries and everything that's actually needed.
Yeah,
And just
that's the best part of it. You don't have to worry about the updates. You don't have to worry about all the dependencies. Um, Somebody's already created an image and done that. And that's kind of what I wanted to show earlier, was just, or kind of explain on a high level, it's just program that somebody installed. So you can make your own and save it, your own images, and spin them up as you need to. But this one's a good one for everybody to do the, practice their pen testing. There's a lot of walkthroughs and information of how to uh, how to go through that. But again, this is one line. We specify the outside port. And so what this allows us to do is I can make multiple instances at the same time, but they would be different ports. So I could say 3001, 3002, and spin those all at the same time and have people use, their own instances. And that there's that's a good way for a classroom, but they also have Juice Shop with Kubernetes that lets you do kind of a classroom setup, to kind of keep score and see the status of how people are doing in terms of finding the vulnerabilities. But let me spin this up and we can show everybody. So this is, I'll do it on the main server. Where's my main server? Okay. I don't know if I ran this already. Let's see. No, again. So again, I didn't have it locally. It goes out to the default repository, pulls it, and then it's going to spin it up on port 3000. So we'll let that come up. So now it should be running. So anybody can look at it on Cyber Jedi Nation .net port. What do we say? 3000. All right. There you go. Now you got your basically website that you can try to full of vulnerabilities that you can start doing your hacking. The first one, when you look at the documentation, the first one that they give you hints on is there's a hidden URL that gives you the score. So that's a scoreboard. So they said, two ways you can to find it is either try to guess the URL or look in the code. So this one, I'm going to put it in there. Hope it doesn't ruin for you guys, but it'll show us all the other tasks that you can, it asks you to try to do. So, but if you do look in the code, because I did look at the code, you can eventually find it. But I'll just put it in here. So, or you can try to have guessed it. I believe that's what it was. And then once you find a vulnerability, it's going to give you points saying, okay, congratulations, you've solved that challenge. But I want to bring up this screen because I want to show you all the challenges that it has, because otherwise it doesn't show you unless I have some documentation. But so for example, you see, I don't know if I can make this bigger. There we go. So these are all the challenges, and this is difficulty 1, 2. So there's a lot of them, a lot of good, a lot of practice you can get out of this. And so once you find these vulnerabilities, it's going to acknowledge that you've solved it and give you points. But you can see the type of categories of what you're kind of doing. Let's see if I had that other web page. So Otha, so like in a classroom setting, you could just spin up multiple of these and then assign um, a person each, different port to do their own testing, right? And then it'll give them their own score because it's remember these are the containers are isolated instances. So that's one way to do like a classroom setting. And again, they do have that Kubernetes set up for Juice Shop that does that. Supposed to have that like teacher mode where you can see how the progress of the students. It creates multiple instances, and you assign the instances to different teams or different students, and keeps track of the score as they go along. But this in itself is nice because you can do this on your workstation, right? So in 1 minute, you can have this spun up and start trying to go through all this vulnerability testing.
Can you talk about because I noticed that when you downloaded the OWASP Juice Shop, I think it was 156 megs or something like that. So, could you talk about how it's different than using VirtualBox and downloading an Ubuntu image, making 2 gigs, and then trying to install Juice Shop? What's the pros and cons of just using? Well, maybe I just said it. It's a easier,
Well,
smaller
that's
image.
exactly right, Otha. It's a lightweight, basically OS essentially because you're not virtualizing the whole machine. You're just virtualizing the program essentially. So definitely, that's one of the advantages is that's just lightweight, a lot faster, less. You're using less resources than you would if you're spinning up a whole server to run, this application, right?
So, quick question. So, if you were in, I'm gonna call it owl mode, you're being interviewed for a Docker security job, right? The way you have this set up is that you have an EC2 instance, and someone mentioned it already in AWS, and you have multiple Docker images that are on it, right? So, if you're in a job interview, what you're gonna do, you would, I'm assuming, just pull up your EC2 instance and just have at it and show them the Docker swarm as far as the orchestration piece to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Depending on the job requirements, you start from that. Start just showing somebody one just showing if you're using these AWS instances, you're showing them that you know how to at least navigate them, start them up, and log on to them. So that's just some of the basics, and then from there, like um, like I have my domain name, right? That I just want to get that just to set up to understand the setup on AWS and the steps and the that one important detail is that like the A record is the IP that you point to for that you have assigned your server, right? And you learn different aspects of AWS, like what's an elastic IP. I didn't realize that elastic IP, before I needed to use it, right? Because basically, when you shut down a server, bring it back up, you get a different IP. But if you use this elastic IP, assign it to a server, you'll always have that IP um, assigned. So it's little things like that kind of, if you're just using it, it shows people that you've gone through that process of generating these instances, using them, updating them, um, and you know how to navigate that. So that's just, yeah, the very basics that, kind of clears the way to, talking about more complex things. So. So any questions on this here? So again, we spun up that, like, you guys can, get to that website also. If I want to spin up another one, and it's a separate instance, so I'll just give it a different outside port. And like that, and you see how quick that was. And the reason that's so quick is because we've already downloaded the image. So the image is basically a fixed file. And so when we do this command, it's just going to reassign or give it a different port, but use the image that's already downloaded to your computer. So it's really fast now. So you could actually get to the port 3002, which is a separate instance than the other one we did. I'll do it again. Just another port. There you go. There's another instance of that juice box that somebody else could use, right? And again, you can do this for testing, like if you want multiple servers and you're testing different aspects, but you want separate instances that are not affecting each other. That's how you can easily spin up those instances.
And so Rick, got a question for you.
Yeah.
The first number is the outside port, and the second number is the inside port, or?
Yeah, exactly. So the first one is the exposed port, okay? And so the inside the one on the right is the inside port, basically what your program is set up to use on the inside. So yeah, so this basically, you say, hey, I want to put this on 3005, so you can try to go to 3005, but it's going to basically, when it goes on the inside, it's using port 3000 internally. But again, this is the outside, so that's how we can have basically the same image running, but isolated instances. So these are completely isolated from each other.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So now there's another program, I think I have it running, called WebGoat. And there's also, again, it's a one-line Docker container that you can run. That's kind of same idea, but it steps you through a lot of good information, kind of as you do like here, like a SQL injection, so you understand different methods of penetration testing. You can see, I don't know if you can see that here. And again, this is called WebGoat. And again, it's a one-liner. You just expose some ports. You can give it a time zone, and then you pull the file and you can start running it. I don't know if we talked about WebGoat. We may have talked about WebGoat before, but just want to show you the container. You can run it in a container quickly again with the one line, and then you're ready to do your just go through and do all your exercises. You can see there's a lot of good stuff there. Now, kind of taking it to the next level with these programs is, let's see if I got that running. Yeah, so basically, they call it DevSecOps with contrast security. So that's just a company that offers a really good tool. Their community edition lets you use it basically full featured, and I'll show you that. So right now, basically, this WebGoat I actually have running differently. I have that running on the AWS service, and I'll send you the link. But basically, I have it connected with Contrast Security. It'll log me out there. So, because basically what you do is this is on the web. Let's get in there. Oh. Oh, crap. Well, let me see if I can reset that. Give me 1 second here. But basically, that's a monitoring program that lets you see what's happening. So basically, you create you install an agent. Basically, you install an agent on the program that reports back to this Contrast Security, and in that way, you're basically you're essentially doing the monitoring and the pen testing, right? You're pen testing with the program, the web goat, and then Contrast Security will show you the attacks or whatever somebody's trying to do or doing audits on your application or server, and in that way you can understand how your attacks or mm, your probes, anything you're trying to do, show up to people who are monitoring those sort of things, right? And that way you can get a better understanding of, hey, your methods of pen testing are really noisy, meaning they're causing a lot of they're easily they trigger these type of programs and alert the security team that, hey, somebody's looking at our application or trying to to hack our server or our application, our website, anything like that. So still trying to get in here. Give me a second here. And this one is really, this Contrast Security is really, gives you really good information. I want to show you. Okay, let's see if it lets me in now. Okay, so right now I have an agent on the WebGoat program. So this WebGoat program is running separately on a different server. And this is the web application. So for example, once you put that agent in, it starts scanning and tells you the vulnerabilities of that application being WebGoat. Okay, what I wanted to show here is that, okay, you have it set up monitoring this application, right? So these are some of the tests. So let's try it. So when you're doing a test here, that's fine, because it's just, this is monitoring it. Let's see if it showed up. Why it doesn't put it in order here? 5 hours now. 8 minutes ago, let's see. Well, I'll just show you one that I mean, I did the same thing earlier, and you can see, okay, we have a SQL injection from this account name parameter. I think this one I use just Smith. And so this is a lot of good information. So yeah, I use Smith. So basically it gives you the overview. This is really good detail once you start getting to the finer aspects of things. And then right here, I mean, it tells you what the issue is, but then you go into the details and you start getting into, the code and what's the issue there. So you're into understanding the vulnerabilities in code and web applications. This is a really good tool. And again, this is from that one activity that we did, or that I did earlier. It gives you all that information against Smiths to tell you, all the details that's going in, and it even gives you how to fix, so you have a better understanding of what's going on, and you can recognize weaknesses here. So this is really good. So again, you're using this you can use this separately, WebGo. You can spin that up separately and go through the exercises. But this is kind of, the next step where we have this connected, contrast security connected, and it shows us those vulnerabilities and why it's vulnerable. So this is one of the major points that I want to show you guys, because this is really a nice setup. And this is the Contrast Security Community Edition. Basically, it just lets you do one agent at a time. So you can install it in one application or one server at a time. And you can do it multiple, but you can monitor only at one at a time, unless you start doing the paid version where you can do, unlimited agents. But again, this is a lot of good information to understand the finer details of vulnerabilities. And it even gives you links to those specific types of vulnerabilities that you're looking at. This here, for example. One more I want to show you. I had it running here.
So while he's pulling that last one up, I just want to kind of show that although he showed the community edition, right? There's with contrast security, there are multiple companies that have something similar, right? Cisco has a product called Tetration, which can do something similar. But the key is this is more cost effective, and it provides you the ability to figure out or to say what's wrong. So when you're, we all want to be hackers and things of that nature. Well, not everyone, but because some people want to do risk assessment. But the key is once you go into a company and you discover a vulnerability like SQL injection, you need to figure out, well, how can I tell the customer to prevent that? So think of it like this. I'm going to charge you to find out what's wrong, and then I'm going to charge you again to tell you how to fix it, right? So being able to understand the problem and how to fix it is also key. You just want to go in and say, oh yeah, there's an SQL injection. This is what I did. And the customer asks, well, how do I fix it? And you don't want to say, I don't know. So having a tool like this is very helpful to help you perfect your craft, to figure out what's wrong. It steps you through it and then tell you how to fix it.
Exactly, and that's actually a good segue, Alpha, to the next program here, because it does that security, the policy monitoring and security system auditing. And again, this is a free program that's a couple lines you have to run, and then you have it spun up, and again, you install agents on the server. So, for example, I have an agent installed on a server on one of those EC2 instances. And just to throw out another term, it's basically what they call a Docker compose file. And when you hear Docker compose file, all that is instructions of starting up multiple containers, and then maybe doing other instructions for those servers. So if you ever see that, you'll see a file, and it's just basically starting up multiple containers with different instructions. So same idea essentially, but it's basically more than one container at a time. So this program is I have an agent installed on a server, and you can see a lot of good information. Well, let me show you this first. This is another Docker program. It's called it's a HFish. It's a honeypot. And what a honeypot is basically you're exposing ports on a server to see who is trying to get into those, or who's basically scanning your server, or who's trying to get into those ports. Let's see what happened here. Did I stop that? Maybe it got hacked. Probably over. No big deal. Let's go to this one though. I think I got too much running. That's cool. Maybe I overloaded my server with all that stuff running. Let's see.
I guess the interesting thing that I'm glad is that you're using that Wazuh, and I know Al for the last two sessions has been talking about that.
Oh, great. Okay, great. Yeah, so
Yeah.
let's look at that one. So yeah, so again, I installed an agent on a server that had exposed to all the internet. So let's go just look at some of the information here that it gives you. It gives you a lot of good information, especially for the kind of auditing and those type of things. But so right here we can see certain events, or what it classified as what's happening, on that server. So brute force, we see, sniffing. That's pretty common. But you can see, people trying to attack all the common ports, trying to use probably RDP, remote desktop, and those sort of things. Trying all sorts of different things, right? Gives you nice graphs. And then you can see the descriptions here, what's happening, the changes. You can set up alerts for changes of there's certain programs started up on your server, especially if you want to see if anybody's running any kind of Dockers, uh, starting up any Docker containers, but just a lot of information you can look at. So let's go to, oops, what information we have here. But there's a lot still that I'm going through to try to understand all the details for this. But again, this is free. You set up an agent on a server. Let's see why it's not getting. Oh, we don't have any policies set up. Let's go to the capabilities. Huh. Oh, I think it stopped looking at the agent. And one of these was actually doing a, it takes a little time. I don't know why it lost it. It was doing those CIS auditing, basically from that documentation that we saw. But you can see here the compliance, PCI, that's a pretty common one, HIPAA. So you can run these, and basically you have all this. It's monitoring against those standards. So right there, you can learn from this just to understand what basically on the output and understand what people are looking for when they do those type of audits. Because, for example, I don't understand what those are, but you know that they're under NIST, and you can go and if you need to know and understand that, then you can have that information available. Yeah, I think when I was doing generating all my containers, I maybe overloaded my server, but normally it's pretty quick. And again, let's see if I have that, what that command was. Again, that was pretty straightforward. Yeah, so in this case, a little different. What you do is you grab some files that they have and you do a Docker compose. And again, Docker compose is you're going to have a file and you're starting up multiple containers that are talking to each other. So again, this was 2 lines essentially. Basically Git is going to copy files over, and then this compose is going to start up that's what they call a YAML file, and it's going to start up the commands and all those containers that are needed to run that. So that's all it took to get this running. Let's see, this shows us some good information. Yeah, and so yeah, so this NIST has all these categories that you can look at, and it tells you what type of issues and how many of the frequency of those issues or changes. So you can see configuration management. And again, if you're really monitoring your system, you'll have alerts to that you'll understand your environment and understand what's unusual, right? But these also are telling you of things of what they think based on those standards, what's unusual. So that's really good information. So this one is one I'm working to really get a really good understanding of, because this in itself is giving me a lot of information, a lot of good information. And again, this is spun up on a separate instance, isolated, and ready to go. So I think that's enough for now.
Rick, I have a quick
So,
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is this Wazuh application similar to what you were doing before with contrast security, where you set up the agent and then you were kind of throwing things at it and generating some malicious traffic yourself? Or is this just kind of passively collecting stuff because it's exposed to the internet and you're just watching what's been hitting it by
No, it's the same idea. Same idea where you can put that agent on a server or application. So, but in this case, yeah, I just put it on a server, just exposed to the internet. But yeah, this can do the same thing. You put that agent on an application, and just like we saw in the other program.
Thank you. And then I had one more question too. It's going a little ways back to you had installed Splunk Enterprise, I think, in a Docker container at one point. Was that also a community edition, or is there some capabilities that you can use that for free, or do you need some sort of licensing to use that?
No, that's that's the Splunk Enterprise. I know in the past, the Splunk Enterprise free edition, basically it was fully functional search capabilities. The only limitations was only one account, and you couldn't send out email alerts, but it was fully functional. And that's how actually I got started. When I was starting to learn it, it was fully functional search capabilities and graphing capabilities. So the only limitation again is the you can only have a default user, and then you can't send out emails.
Very cool. Thank you.
Sure. So let's nothing in the chat. So any other questions? If not, I'll hand it over to Otha.
So definitely, let me check my text messages, see if somebody just texted me who were not in the chat. No, I think we're good. So we're definitely good. I definitely appreciate you taking the time sharing with us. You made me look bad because I haven't used the Wazuh stuff yet, so I need to get cracking on that. And I just see you brought up the H-fish as well.
Yeah, this is a honeypot. I just want to kind of show you all the text that we're seeing. Let's see. Seems to be a Chinese program, so you may use it at your own risk, I guess. But I let this run today, and you can see usually the password shows more, but this is showing the passwords that they're trying to use. But these are all the locations that getting hits from. So you see a lot from China, India, Russia, Vietnam, Brazil. So this gives you a so basically the honeypot is exposing ports. Doesn't really go to any programs, but it just kind of shows you what people are trying to hit, and then also what passwords they're trying to use to get into your systems. So that's just something I wanted to show that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I like the heat map widget layout of that. That is pretty good.
So yeah, although yeah, that program, that Wazuh program, it's really, I mean, I've just got started with that, but that has a lot of good information, and that contrast security definitely also is good for learning when you're when you're going through those other programs. So definitely, I'll be doing more on that, and hopefully can present some good information on that.
Do me one favor, since you already have, go to Indeed.com and put in Docker security. And when you, for the where, just put any location. So it's what, 14,000 jobs or something,
Yep,
right?
14,000. Yeah.
And one of the things I want to kind of highlight to everyone is that, we're showing you stuff that's kind of cutting edge. And also that when you look at the 14,000, right, that's a lot of jobs actually that's out there. So as you're planning your path and career, and we're going down this path of trying to spend the next few months going over cloud security and hacking and pen testing and things of that nature, Docker is a component of that. Rick mentioned a vulnerable um, And I'm trying to paste in a vulnerable, and I can't paste it in. He mentioned a vulnerable hub, I mean, a vulnerable Docker to use to test. So I want to provide that in the link as well with a walkthrough that you can actually use. Someone also put in, Nick put in a link for a honeypot as well. So thank you, Nick, for doing that. So Docker security is something that you need to think about. It goes well with the hands-on dealing with the cloud security. And another thing I want to point out is that we always talk about taking notes. And so when I looked at your OneNote, it reminds me of our Soul's OneNote, the way you have things organized. So as anyone that's actually learning things, right, you definitely want to make sure that you have some sort of note system. I use Evernote. I need to upgrade to OneNote like these guys, where you can go back and learn stuff and quickly make notes of it. So when you use time for that interview, you do have something to help guide you in that conversation. But I just want to highlight the Docker security because there's a lot of them that are remote positions similar to the cloud that you can easily um, find some sort of job opportunity for as well. Okay, so definitely look at Docker security. We talked about finding multiple jobs or multiple job descriptions and finding that common denominator of things to learn, right? Um, so I just want to kind of highlight that to let you know that, look, there's jobs out there readily available that you don't have to, wait to get a certificate in Docker security. Okay. And if you're learning stuff in AWS, Google Cloud, and Azure, they all have some sort of Kubernetes, Docker Swarm um, application or alternative that you can use in each one of those cloud providers. Okay. So definitely appreciate it. One of the things that we're going to cover, and this is right timely what Rick is talking about, we're just going to talk about installing Dockers of that Juice shop, which is already done, the WebGoat, and installing that um, contrast security, right? That way you can get your feet wet on it. You don't have to do it in the cloud. You can get VirtualBox, put an Ubuntu or Linux image on it, and then install the Dockers on that. Now, it'd be great if you could do something in the cloud because AWS has a free instance, same as Azure and um, Google Cloud. But if you're afraid of not wanting to get that free tier because of charges to your credit card, that's fine. We can do in both ways. We'll do it in AWS, and then we'll also do it in on the VirtualBox Linux machine. Okay, so we'll work that into our next class. That way you can get the habit of installing Dockers, installing in the cloud, and then you need to start practicing your pen testing, right? So part of the cloud component is pen testing those web applications that are in it, and then we're going to grow to pen testing the AWS infrastructure as well. And the reason why we're doing AWS is because Rick showed you WebGoat. There's this thing called CloudGoat, which is a vulnerable AWS instance, and we'll stand that up and use that as our attack surface. Okay. Any more questions or comments before we wrap it up?